The New York Jets are now on the board.
Okay, Jet fans, Darrell Revis.
Being in New York has been one of the greatest blessings.
Saks Fifth Avenue ran that one right now.
The New York Jets select.
Welcome to the final episode of NFL Draft Preview. I guess I should say NFL Draft Review because the 2022 NFL Draft is behind us. Dane Brugler almost is at the end of the tunnel. He sees the light of summer, sunshine, maybe a nice little barbecue in a couple minutes here, maybe a couple days. You know, how soon are we talking here for you? Like, I know there's a couple things you got to take care of, but how quickly can you put it behind you and just enjoy, you know, what life should be like?
Well, I got home from Vegas last night, actually, a late Monday night. And, of course, my 9-month-old daughter was up waiting for me. So, you know, that was she was very excited to see me. So, of course, that was a couple hours before she went back to sleep. So it's already started. But no, you know, towards the end of this week, I'll start to really wind down, take a breather, and take a little bit of time just to enjoy T-ball and mowing my lawn and just doing some regular things for a little bit here.
Yeah, well, we're almost there. Obviously, we're going to have to talk about this Jets draft. Your favorite draft among all 32 NFL teams, you don't do grades, you do power rankings. Your favorite one was the New York Jets. Why is that?
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say, you know, this isn't like the best. I'm not ranking 1 through 32 of the best draft classes. These are just my favorite. You know, I'm not using some analytical formula here or, you know, I'm just from my gut going over. I laid out each draft class and went through it all and just I ranked, okay, which one of these draft classes did I just love what they did? And obviously the teams that had multiple first round picks or multiple early picks, clear advantage because they're getting more players, better players. And of course, with the Jets having 3 first round picks, that certainly swayed me in their favor. But you know, I love Sauce Gardner, the top corner this year. Garrett Wilson, my top receiver. Jermaine Johnson, a player we talked about, you know, ad nauseum, just as a guy this Jets team really liked, and I think probably paying them to pass at number 10, but be able to come back into the first round at 26 and still get him. I mean, that's huge. And then not only that, but then picking up Breece Hall in the second, Jeremy Ruckert, who we talked about a lot throughout the process as being a perfect Jet. So from top to bottom, and then what they did in the 4th round, top to bottom, I just love what the Jets did. I think, you know, only 7 picks. I think they nailed each one.
All right, well, let's just go pick by pick here. Pick number 4, Ahmad Sauce Gardner. He was a guy that when you did your mock drafts originally, you had him to the Jets, and then you're like, you know, I don't know if I see Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh going in this direction that early, given their history. They go in that direction. 1, were you surprised? And 2, what makes Sauce Gardner worthy of the 4th overall pick? And what should Jets fans be expecting from a pretty early stage from him?
Yeah, see, and this is where we can kind of get ourselves into trouble when we, you know, look at past what teams have done in the past and what has worked for them. And so we kind of attach ourselves to that when we project in a mock draft and say, okay, well, you know, Robert Saleh, look at the cornerback position, who he's won with. I mean, hasn't necessarily had to go that direction in the first round. So, you know, there's a good bet. Maybe they don't go that route. But I mean, there's no arguing with Sauce Gardner being one of the best players on the board when they were selecting there at 4. Tall, stretched out athlete, big time speed for that, especially for that size. Love the length. A guy that wasn't thrown at very, very much. He still had 3 interceptions each of the last 3 years. So with Sauce Gardner, the confidence that he's going to bring to that wide receiver room, he's getting on the field immediately, as you would expect for the 4th overall pick. So even though I think we looked at kind of the tea leaves and thought, they probably won't go with a wide receiver here just based on their history, pleasantly surprised because I think Sauce Gardner, one of the best defensive players in this draft, could end up being the best defensive player from this draft.
When are you going to get a chain like the bottle of sauce that he had?
That was mine. Year, maybe? He borrowed mine. So I told him I could lend it out. Just I need collateral, you know, a little deposit, you know. So, but I trust him. Yeah.
And what sauce would you put in there? Because I don't know if you know this, the top actually pops off. You can put stuff in it if you wanted to. Not that you'd want to mess like jewelry and sauce. That sounds kind of weird to me. But like if you had the choice, what are you putting in there just so you have it at all times? Maybe you want it on a sandwich. Maybe you want it in whatever situation you need.
Well, I mean, as a dad of four, I mean, there's a lot of applesauce in our house. And so I'm constantly having to, try to calm these babies down. And so having applesauce at my disposal at any given moment that I could just, spoon in the mouth, kind of calm them down, get them quiet. That makes sense to me. I like that idea.
Yeah, I think I just might have given you an idea. Maybe not, as expensive as that one, but, something to keep in mind, maybe something to put around your neck. Anyway, just before we move on to Garrett Wilson, what are your thoughts on this Jets cornerbacks room now that last year we're talking about Breece Hall and Brandon Echols as the starters at the end of the season? Now you add in DJ Reed in free agency, you add in Sauce Gardner. What kind of facelift do you think the Jets cornerbacks room got?
Certainly they got better. There's no doubt about it. And it'll be interesting to see how they utilize each one of these corners and their skill sets. I mean, Sauce Gardner is a true outside corner. But with a guy like DJ Reed, is he be playing primarily inside in the slot? How are they going to use him? And then the competition at the other positions. I mean, this is it's not about necessarily replacing players as it is upgrading and creating competition. That's what you want to do, especially at a premium position like corner. And they certainly did that this offseason with Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, a lot more competition at that corner spot. And the guys already on the roster, it's not a ticket out of town, but it is kind of a heads up that, hey, you better bring your A game to camp because you've got some competition now, and it's not going to be necessarily a cakewalk to be a starter or even make the roster.
All right, moving on to pick number 10, Garrett Wilson, your top receiver. You've been on that since day one. So with Garrett Wilson, we know about the body control, we know about the speed, we know about the vertical threat. When you factor what he brings to the Jets, what do you make of that room now that's Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios, and Garrett Wilson? And what should Jets fans be most excited about in terms of Garrett Wilson's strengths?
Yeah, and with Garrett Wilson, and my comparison for him has been CeeDee Lamb, and I think similar to CeeDee Lamb, he could play anywhere on that offensive formation. You want to play inside, outside, XYZ. You can motion him all over backfield. You don't have to pigeonhole him as he's an X only or a Y only, Z only. He can do everything up and down the formation, and that gives you flexibility. Across your wide receiver room. And so that's key with a guy like Garrett Wilson. And again, not the biggest guy. And that's maybe the biggest knock against him. He's under 6 foot. He's under 190 pounds. And so the size isn't necessarily going to blow you away. But the strengths of what he brings to the field with the speed, the body control, the ball skills, he just makes the playbook come alive. He really does. That has been my line with him throughout the process. Because he can get open before the catch and give his quarterback a clear window. He can get open after the catch and really be a creator with the ball in his hands. So with a guy like Wilson, he's just he's an igniter with your offense. And let's be honest, what this team has done to surround the quarterback position with all the talent. Now it's up to the quarterback, and Garrett Wilson's part of that. It's okay, Zach Wilson. This is year 2. What are you going to do to take that next step in your development? We just gave you this shiny new toy to play with, and he's going to help make you better. Now it's up to you to go make things happen.
I love it. What you just said has to be music to Jets fans' ears, and something that I'm curious your take on it. This class, I think, before the draft, I mean, I guess you can consider it now too, but when you look at the class, you're like, maybe there's no blue chip talent, and there's clearly a lot of depth. But when you talk about a top 10 wide receiver like Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb wasn't selected in the top 10, but that's as a player, you say they're similar. As prospects, just the wide receiver classes as wholes, like, I don't want to pour salt and say this receiver class isn't quite to the level of that one, but how do you view both of those classes? Because a lot of these receivers like Garrett Wilson were very productive, and they seem to be that they're on the track to be very good pros.
Well, I mean, we just have to look at the run that happened. We had 4 or 5 receivers taken or 4 in the 5 pick span. I mean, it was just crazy the way things happened, the way things played out with the run on those guys. And we knew that was going to happen. It's just, when was it going to start? We thought maybe Atlanta at 8 could be the most logical spot for one of these receivers to go. And then if you're the Jets, you knew if you wanted one of these stud receivers, and we saw all 6 go in the top 20. and then no other receivers, because we thought maybe there'd be a second run later in the first round or early in the second, and we just didn't really see that. Teams waited after that first initial tier. But you look at what the Saints gave up to go get Chris Olave. You look what the Lions gave up to go get Jameson Williams. Each one of those teams made big, expensive moves to go get that receiver. So the Jets sitting there at 10, they didn't have to move. I know it probably pained them to pass on the pass rusher there, or some of these other players that might have been available, but Garrett Wilson was the no-brainer. I think the way, and we've talked about it since January. The way he could fit this offense, the way he's going to help immediately, he was the best of a really top-heavy, impressive wide receiver group.
And obviously the Jets are very excited about the Wilson to Wilson connection. And we'll talk about the names in a minute here, specifically when we get to Breece Hall, because there are a lot of similar names now on the New York Jets. But before we get there, the Jets had picks 35 and 38. They move up 9 spots. Similar to last year, they moved up 9 spots as well, from 23 to 14 to select Elijah Vera Tucker. They go from 35 to 26. Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. How surprised were you that he was still available at pick number 26?
Oh, extremely. Pass rushers don't last very long in the NFL draft, and he's the exception. We heard after the draft, the Jets got 3 of their top 8 players, including Jermaine Johnson, which tells you, and we talked about it before the draft. We knew how much they liked Jermaine Johnson, but for him to fall as far as he did, and you have to wonder, when did Joe Douglas start making those calls? Trying to get up back into the first round. Jermaine Johnson passed, 15, 17, 20. You can bet he was keeping an eye on that. You don't want to give up draft picks to, especially when you already had 2 first rounders. This is a team that's still building, and you don't want to trade away high draft capital. But if you have a chance to go get one of your guys that you ranked very high in this draft, this is why you pour all the resources into scouting, is to build the board and trust it. And at a certain point, it just became too much. We can't let him fall anymore. Go get Jermaine Johnson. This is a guy that's going to come in, play the run. He's going to get after the quarterback. I don't know that he's ever going to be a perennial Pro Bowler per se, but he is going to be an above average pro for a long time, in my opinion.
So I don't know if you know this or if you heard this. Joe Douglas said that pick 15 came around. He called every single team until he executed a deal at 26. Talk about commitment to a player. The Jets showed it right there, trading up for Jermaine Johnson, trying to get him from pick 15 and then ended up at pick 26. So with that being said, what is it about Jermaine Johnson's skill set that you think fits what Robert Saleh, Jeff Ulbrich and company want to run up front?
He's long, he's athletic, he can stand up, he can put his hand on the ground, could play inside or outside the offensive tackle, could play head up over the tackle. He's not his get off is okay. It's not really what makes him so dangerous as a pass rusher. But I think his length and a point of attack skills really are what sets him apart. That, and then his instincts. He is so quick to read the backfield action. So, I mentioned this before, but a lot of my favorite plays from Jermaine Johnson this year came versus the run, because his recognition was so impressive of understanding the blocking scheme and the play and what the offense was trying to do. He sniffed it out immediately, put himself in a position to make plays. And then, you also appreciate a guy that just bet on himself. He was kind of part of a rotation at that, in that Georgia defense, and transfers to Florida State. It's a big gamble. At least if he stayed at Georgia, he has a built-in excuse why his production wasn't better. Is, hey, I had to share time, but when I was out there, I was pretty good. He goes to Florida State knowing his snap count was going to maybe double, and he was up for the challenge. Led the ACC in tackles for loss, led the ACC in sacks. You love a guy that has that type of football character, that believes in himself and bets on himself. So Jermaine Johnson, I think a lot of teams in the top 25 made a mistake by letting him fall that far.
And why do you think that he did fall that far? Like, was there any post-draft chatter that maybe you're like, okay, like, I'll give you an example. Nakobe Dean gets selected. People were like, oh, there's a medical that popped up that maybe isn't what teams want to see. Doesn't feel like that was the case with Jermaine Johnson. Feels like it was almost kind of a mystery.
Very much so. I think that because he's not that elite get off, type of guy, the burst is not why you love him. Can be a little segmented at times with his pass rush. So he's not, that type of pass rusher. I mean, he can win, but it's with length. It's with a very technical approach where he's going to use swipe moves and rip moves, and so I think maybe that was something that turned off some teams. But still, very, very surprised that a lot of teams, especially you look at the Chiefs. I mean, there's several teams in that early second round range, and even a team like the Cowboys, passing on a guy like Jermaine Johnson was a big surprise.
All right, so just when you thought the Jets, maybe they'll trade back in the second round because they traded up to get Jermaine Johnson. Maybe they want to recoup some of those picks. That's not the case. They move up 2 spots. They execute a trade with the New York Giants. They take Breece Hall, the running back of Iowa State. We didn't talk a whole lot about running backs in the pre-draft process. So what is it about Breece Hall that makes him, in your eyes, a viable option to be the first running back called on draft night?
Yeah, personally, I liked Kenneth Walker a little bit better, but it's hard to argue with Breece Hall. I mean, it's just hard to poke holes in him as a player. I mean, everything that you see with Breece Hall, you like. 41 touchdowns over the last 2 years, 41 rushing touchdowns the last 2 years, set an FBS record with 24 straight games with at least 1 rushing touchdown. The guy just finds the end zone, and you see the way he tested. I don't know that he necessarily plays as explosive and dynamic as the numbers will, at the combine show, but he's not a slug out there. I mean, he is, to me, the most impressive thing with Breece Hall, the patience, the instincts, the decision-making. We talk so much about decision-making with quarterbacks, not enough with running backs. Breece Hall understands the blocking scheme. He's patient, he's disciplined, and it maximizes every single run. And that's what you love about him as a running back. That, and what he brings on passing downs as a pass catcher, as a guy that can get better in pass protection, but I think at least has a base that you can work off of.
So when you said earlier that Garrett Wilson makes the playbook come alive, when you factor in the Jets' offensive line additions like Laken Tomlinson, moving Elijah Vera Tucker to the right side, hoping that Mekhi Becton comes back to the 2020 form or on that track where he showed that he could be a very good tackle in this league, particularly in the run game. When you factor that in, you factor in what the Jets have in Michael Carter and the way that he came on, you add Breece Hall to the equation. What does he bring to that room, or what can he do to that room that you think might take them to the next level?
Well, it's kind of like the Garrett Wilson conversation where Wilson can do everything. You can line him up anywhere you want in the formation, and he's going to be able to make a play. Breece Hall, the same thing. It doesn't matter the situation, third down, first down, wherever you want him to play, he can do that. And so I think, especially when you look at the scheme, it was primarily a zone scheme at Iowa State. And, looking at the Jets' zone-based offense, I think it's a perfect fit for this scheme in particular. And even though I don't think running back was necessarily at the top of, where we thought the Jets were going, it's hard to, again, when you want to surround your quarterback with good talent, it's hard to disagree with what an addition like this, what it would do for your quarterback, what it does for your passing game. It's hard to disagree with, making a pick like this, even though I know some will say it's too early for a running back. And when you have a chance to get the top running back in the draft on your board, I certainly understand why they went that direction.
I think there's definitely, I know that you did not have Breece Hall as the number 1 running back, but is there a case to be had that the Jets drafted the top corner, receiver, and running back in the draft?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, there was not a big gap between these two players for me, even though I did give Kenneth Walker a little bit of the edge. But, I mean, Breece Hall, again, it's kind of like Jermaine Johnson, too, where, I mean, point me in the direction of the big negatives on Jermaine Johnson. Kind of the same thing with Breece Hall. Point me in the direction of the poking holes in him. Where are we nitpicking with Breece Hall? He's just not a guy that has a ton of, you have to kind of search for negatives on him. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about what he's going to bring to the room, what he's going to bring to the field. Another guy, we talked about it with Sauce Gardner, competition and what that does for everybody in the room. Breece Hall, he's bringing a lot of competition to that running back room.
All right, then the Jets end day 2 with pick number 101. Still on offense, tight end Jeremy Ruckert. Now, we talked a lot about Ruckert, his prowess as a run blocker, but what do you think about the situation he now walks into behind guys like CJ Uzama and Tyler Conklin, where he can develop a little bit as a receiver, even though he showed flashes at Ohio State that he can do it. And day one, he'll stick his face in the fan as a run blocker.
Yeah, we talked before how we love what they did at tight end in free agency, with Conklin and Uzama and kind of rebuilding that tight end room with those guys that they brought in, and then you drop a Jeremy Ruckert in there as well, who can learn from those guys, who is a do everything all around tight end, can block, can run routes, can catch the football. I love the fit. I mean, Ruckert was a guy that going into the process, I thought he's going somewhere top 75. He's that good of a player. Even though the production maybe doesn't jump off the page. And then, he has the foot injury. So no combine, no pro day, no workout. And so I dropped him just a little bit. He was, I think, number 85 for me. And the Jets were able to get him a little bit later than that. So I love the value with Jeremy Ruckert. And I love the player. I mean, the Long Island native. It's funny. I tweeted back in January. I looked it up. It's January 15th, how I love the fit of Jeremy Ruckert in that Jets scheme. And his dad, Jeremy's dad, actually responded to that tweet at the time with a picture of young Jeremy Ruckert with a Jets tattoo on his cheek. And I thought, it's perfect. The Long Island native stays close to home. And, it turns out it came to fruition. So Jeremy Ruckert, I love the fit. I love what he adds to that room. And then, towards the end of his rookie contract, year 3, how are we talking about Jeremy Ruckert? I think there's a lot of optimism about what he could be and possibly an eventual starter.
I love it. Came to fruition for you, huh? I remember last year, our mock draft, you had Michael Carter, the running back, in the 4th round. Now you're kicking it up. You went to January 15th talking about a potential fit for the Jets and it ended up coming to fruition. What do you think about that? 2 for 2, a little bit.
Sometimes you get lucky, You throw enough darts, eventually you're going to hit one, right? So, the fit made too much sense from the start. Just not only the geographical ties, but just with what the Jets were looking for. And, after they made those 2 signings in free agency, you wondered, well, maybe they wait until the 4th, 5th round, or if they draft a tight end at all. But I think the Ruckert at that point in the 3rd round, just too much value. They couldn't pass on him.
All right, how about day 3? The Jets have 2 picks. Max Mitchell, tackle out of Louisiana, is the first one. What does he bring to the table that maybe the Jets don't have right now? And I know that day 3, you're talking about traits, you're talking about developmental traits. What does he bring that you see what the Jets saw?
With a player like Max Mitchell, you have to trust the tape, because it was surprising at the combine. He did not test like I expected, or a lot of scouts expected. The 40 time wasn't great. 3 cone time was not great. The jumps, the vertical. So, but when you watch the tape, you see a guy that really loves to mix things up with his hands. Moves pretty well, and you love that he has experience across the offensive line. He was primarily a right tackle at Louisiana, but also played left tackle, played a little bit of guard. And this is a player that should have redshirted, but he didn't. They needed him right on the field immediately. He was basically a starter when he showed up. So a guy that's still learning, still developing, but at that point in the 4th round, I really like that investment. It's low risk, but there is some reward possible with a player like Mitchell, who has understanding with his hand, what to do with his hands, and then also, moves pretty well despite what the testing numbers say.
For a guy like this, Dane, coming from a smaller school like Louisiana, the Jets have their starting tackles in place, no doubt. If he were to be like the Jets swing tackle year 1, is that a little ambitious of a thought and you'd like to see some development? Or you think that if for whatever reason his number were called as a rookie to fill in at one of those spots, he could do it at a reasonably efficient rate?
I don't think that he's necessarily NFL ready. I think that if you throw him out there, there will be some speed bumps. There's no doubt about it. And, it's something you have to be prepared for if he's on the field. But with that said, I do think that he can hold his own, because he moves. Not only does he move well, but I think he has a really strong understanding of timing and where his hands need to be, and that's especially important. But when they're not, if he's just a tick off, he can be jostled at contact. The base strength, the core strength, I don't think is quite where it needs to be. He needs a little bit of time developing in the weight room. They're with the Jets coaches. So if he's out there, at any point this rookie season, I would expect some speed bumps. But that's the best time you learn is when you're on the job like that.
If that is definitely the case, especially when you think about the Jets rookie class last year. Even the day 3 guys thrown to the fire immediately definitely progressed as the season went on. For a guy like Max Mitchell, before we wrap up with Micheal Clemons, is that what you'd like to see in a couple of years, though, in terms of a swing tackle, or you think he has potential to even be a little more than that?
No, swing tackle is exactly it. That's kind of where I graded him, as a early day 3 developmental swing tackle, a guy that is can really grow into being a steady pass blocker, can get the job done as a zone run blocker. So I think the fit is exactly what this team is looking for on their offensive line. It's just he might not be, in ready-made packaging. He might need a little bit of time, in the crock pot just to finish him a little bit.
All right, Micheal Clemons, this is the Jets' final draft pick number 117, Texas A&M. The story's great. He's a very quiet, reserved guy, at least so it seems when you watch him interview. But on the field, something definitely switches for him, and he plays with a little bit of violence, as you can see. So what is it about Micheal Clemons that, if you're the Jets, that excites you about him as a prospect?
Yeah, I mean, throw in the LSU tape from last year if you want to get excited about Micheal Clemons. His ability to use, because he's so long as a player, almost 35-inch arms, and he's so powerful at contact. His hands are so heavy. His ability to attack blockers and then work off of that, whether he wants to go through the blocker or use a little bit of that quickness to work him off balance and then get around him to the quarterback. He can do that. He's not necessarily a twitchy pass rusher, but he does have some explosiveness in his lower body. And when he uses that forward lean where he can just go forward towards the blocker and get him off kilter, that's where he's at his best. So the speed to power is really impressive. He's an older player. There's some stuff in his background that you weren't sure how teams were going to handle it. But on the field, it's not hard to really like this player, and it's because he already owns NFL physical traits. He looks the part. When he goes into that Jets locker room, I think his teammates will kind of look at him and say, "Oh, when we sign you?" I mean, I don't think they'll realize this is a rookie we're talking about here. He is physically ready for the NFL.
That is amazing. I definitely got that sense, even just when you look at him sitting down, even when you look on YouTube, if you just pop on any kind of highlights of Micheal Clemons. But the last thing I want to ask you in terms of Micheal Clemons, if your hope for Max Mitchell is to become a swing tackle in a couple of years, what is your hope for Micheal Clemons in a couple of years, and what do you hope for him as a rookie?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that he's going to be part of the rotation from the get-go. As long as he can handle the playbook, and he's going to be out there and making being part of a rotation because he can play the run. He can give you a little bit of juice, rush to the passer, and I think he has that size where kick him inside. He's not you have to put him in a certain spot. Use him inside, outside, and I think when you look at the Jets' defensive line, they've got versatility up front with the current roster and the guys they've added. So I'm excited. You drop a Clemons in there. I think you got another guy that has that versatility that can be really a strong part of your rotation.
All right. Last question here is the following. Every team right now in the NFL feels good about their draft. You would imagine, because you just added players that you like. You feel like you got a little bit better. With that being said, what is it about this Jets draft that you would really hang your hat on and say, this is the reason why I think the New York Jets are a better team today than yesterday, and the players that they drafted will be good pros and help turn the corner for this franchise?
Well, it starts with them drafting 3 of their top 8 players. I mean, there's no way, no point in getting cute with my answer. I mean, it's as simple as that. They got 3 really good players in the first round. They come back with 2 really good offensive players in second and day 2, and then they add 2 fourth rounders, guys that can be part of the long-term plans. And so, if I'm Zach Wilson, I'm watching the draft unfold. I'm seeing who he added. I'm getting excited, and I'm looking at this and saying, okay, they're surrounding me with really good players, and now it's up to me to go make things happen. So if I'm a Jets fan, I'm ecstatic about what would happen. This is why you add, if you're able to, this is why you add the draft capital. It gives you options. You want to trade back up to the first round to get a Jermaine Johnson, you could do that. If you want to move around a little bit and make sure that you're getting your guys, the guys that you graded high for your scheme and your culture and what you're building, you have the flexibility to go do that. And that's what we've seen with Joe Douglas and this coaching staff and the draft picks they have had. They have been aggressive, but at the same time, you understand the plan. It's not, they're just not throwing darts out there. That you understand that there's a plan in place. And if I'm a Jets fan, that makes me excited.
That is the perfect way to end the review episode of NFL Draft Preview. That puts a period, Dane, at the end of the 2022 NFL Draft. As always, it's been a pleasure. And, next year, maybe the Jets don't have 2 first-round picks as it stands, but you never know what's going to happen. So it's been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you next season.
Can't wait. Thanks, Ethan.